So hey anime fans, the series name is What If Naruto and Miraculous, Tales of Ladybug got Harem, so let's start the series. It was a decent day in Paris, France as a young woman wearing a housekeeper uniform around the age of 14 years of age. She had long brilliant fair hair that went down her back and blue eyes and delicate tan skin and cute stubble-like pigmentations on her cheeks. She is a very lovely young lady and she was correct now attempting to wrap up her errands before she could go to class. Her name was Naru Uzumaki and she fills in as a housekeeper for the Agresti family. She wasn't generally a servant, she used to be a Kanochi from Konoha and was initially from the basic countries and island in the nation Japan that not very many individuals from the rest of the world knows about. So how could she wind up functioning from a hazardous professional killer to functioning as a house cleaner for a well-off family? Well, everything began 1 year prior. Flashback. In the basic countries of Konoha, Naru was wearing dark memorial service dress and a few swathes since they just had a memorial service for the third Hokage a couple of days after the sand and sound attacked them during the Chunin tests. When it finished, she was called to the Hokage's office by the two seniors for Konoha, making the youthful light considered what they needed from her now. They went into the room where she was pausing and moved toward her. "What do you old farts need this time?" Naru asked them, showing them no regard since she generally felt they didn't merit it. They frowned at her, don't however express anything to her about her discourteous comment. Naru Uzumaki Jinchuriki of the Kyubi, you are thus expelled from Konoha, Koharu tells her, making her glower and scowl at them as she stands up and snarls, "What in the world? For what reason am I being ousted? I did nothing out of sorts." She requested, making Hamura scowl at her, for delivering the Kyubi during the battle against the Shikaku. He told her, making her jeer. She realized immediately this was only a reason to dispose of her, however it was then she had concluded she was finished. "You understand what? Fine, yet don't come to me lamenting your misstep later on and requesting that I return. I'm gone," Naru says and leaves the workplace while flipping them the bird. She then, at that point, hurries to the seedy area of town when Jiraiya, who was leaving a house of ill repute, emerges with his standard blush and distorted grin. "Okay, some new stuff for my next novel," he says, and afterward he sees Naru strolling towards her loft. He then, at that point, saw the irate look all over. Getting a terrible inclination, he strolls over to her, see what's up, since she is his goddaughter after all, even in the event that he hasn't been in that frame of mind after her introduction to the world, something he in every case profoundly lamented, which was one reason why he had consented to prepare her for the Chunin tests final, so he can fire getting the ball really rolling. He heads toward her and taps her shoulder. "Hello whelp, what has you so vexed?" he asked her, making her moan. "The older folks just expelled me from Konoha, so I'm pressing my stuff, yet obviously I'm finished with this. All of this, I never again believe that anything should do with the existence of a Kanochi," she says with a glower all over as she proceeds with her way to her loft. At the point when Jiraiya heard that, he glowered and flew off the handle. He wasn't shocked they did this. They exploited his master's passing to at long last be freed of the unfortunate young lady. He knew whether his teacher was still here he would have halted them immediately, yet he wouldn't allow them to pull off this gracious damnation. No, but first he needs to work on something for Naru and chooses to help her. He follows her to her loft and finds spray painting on her entryway that says, "Kick the bucket fox bitch, get lost devil prostitute," and other awful things. He saw her moan and strolls inside her condo, which was presently destroyed and bunches of her effects were obliterated and broken. She then, at that point, imploded to her knees, and for once in her life since she was 6 years of age she separated in tears while Jiraiya watches her with trouble. He then understood that attempting to keep her in this town will just keep on making her hopeless. She was so troubled at this point she concealed it very well from everybody. Assuming Minato perceived how these individuals treated his daughter, he would turn in his grave. "I'm so sorry, Minato. Kushina, I have bombed you both. I'm not qualified to be her godfather, but maybe I can work on something for her. Something, right? he contemplates internally and grins and takes out a visa and a money and hands it to her, making her wipe her tears when she sees the visa and cash. "What's this?" she asked him, and he goes towards the entryway, halting at the entryway, and guides her. "Those are your passes to opportunity. Utilize that visa and cash to purchase yourself a boarding pass for the main country beyond Japan you see, and carry on with your new life there. Begin new, make new and genuine companions, discover a few side interests, do anything that you were unable to do while living here. Naru, you're as yet youthful and you should be cheerful. Don't discard your life for individuals who don't see the value in you," he tells her with affection, making destroys run her face. Before he leaves, she goes to him and handles him into an embrace from behind. "Much thanks to you, pervy sage," she shares with him, making Jiraiya grin delicately and pivots and embraces her back. "No issue, rascal. Currently proceed to partake in your new life," he tells her, making her gesture her head, and she completed the process of pressing, and she heads to the air terminal while Jiraiya grins, watching her go, happy he had the option to do something pleasant for his goddaughter. At the point when Naru showed up at the air terminal with her things, she glanced around, and before she purchases a ticket she saw a present shop and gets a thought. She slips inside and uses a cash to purchase herself some new garments. When she came out, she was wearing a dark hoodie with a red Chinese mythical serpent it, and she wore a red short skirt and dark tights and red banter shoes, and her hair was up in a crown mesh in the back with a red strip tied in the back as she laughs, feeling pretty and charming. She then raced to the ticket work area, and the 13-year-old young lady purchases a pass to Paris, France, and heads to the plane and gets onto her flight. She looks outside the plane window and grins, feeling an enormous load off her shoulders without precedent for her life as she nods off. The following morning when she awakened, she had shown up in Paris. She gets off the plane and glances around with surprise and stunningness. "Wow, this spot is astounding," she expresses cheerfully as she glances around wherever around her. At the point when she was finished investigating the city, she concluded it was the ideal opportunity for her to track down a spot to live and a temporary work anyway. Before she heard a few clamors close by, so she goes to examine and finds a lot of men, encompassing a man in a pleasant suit wearing glasses with a cool demeanor all over. He seemed as though he was simply leaving his vehicle and was attempting to head off to some place significant anyway. Was immediately encircled by a lot of individuals who needed to burglarize. "Okay, elderly person, give us every one of your effects and money at the present time," one of the cheats says with a shrewd sneer. Gabriel frowns at him. He had left his home just for a day, something he hasn't done not since his better half's passing, to go to a vital gathering when he was before long encircled by hooligans who needed to loot him, and what's more terrible, he left the family's protector gorilla back at home to keep his child Adrian protected and safeguarded. This really genuinely irritated him. He was going to settle on a decision to somebody when unexpectedly one of the men was hit upside the head by a 13-year-old young lady who rapidly remains before him, defensively scowling at them. "Annoy and let him be. Other shrewd, you must solution to my clench hands," she says icily, making the men glower, and each of them 5 attempt to hop her anyway. She rapidly grins, and to Gabriel's shock she effectively pounds each and every one of them up. After that they all took off from her. "No doubt you mongrels better run," she shouts at them. She then, at that point, goes to him and grins at him in a benevolent way. "You okay?" she asked him with concern, making Gabriel gaze at her quietly, making her a piece awkward. She was going to leave anyway. He immediately halted her. "Stand by. If you don't mind, kindly accompany me briefly," he asked her, making her chance to him and shrug and smiles at him. "Sure, I don't have any place to go right now at any rate," she lets him know, amazing him. She then strolled into his vehicle and his driver drives them to the gathering, and Naru goes inside with him. When they were finished with the gathering, they leave and return inside the vehicle, yet rather than getting back they came by a little bistro where he compensated his friend in need with a feast, making her eyes illuminates and slobber a digit when she sees the food before her. "Wow, this looks flavorful, much thanks, gracious. I'm Naru Uzumaki, by the way, Databeo," She expresses happily to him and she starts to eat eagerly while he watches her quietly. Let me know, youthful miss, what did you mean before that you have nowhere to go? He asked her inquisitively, making her wince and stop briefly, and she starts to recount to him her whole story and about her own expulsion. At the point when she was done he felt disgusted. Gabriel confessed to himself he was not the most pleasant individual on the planet, particularly after the demise of his significant other who sadly died a couple of months prior, making him extremely upset and breaking his very being, turning his heart to a block of ice. Yet even somebody like him could never do something that terrible to a youngster. Gabriel thought for a couple of additional seconds and concocted a thought. Miss, how might you want to come function for me at my chateau? Our old housekeeper and guardian has as of late resigned and I'm needing another one. If it's all the same to you, I will ensure not exclusively you're compensated fairly, yet additionally you have a rooftop over your head in one of the many rooms of my manor. In addition to your a similar age of my child, you would make a great ally for him, particularly after his mom died as of late, he says, offering her something that she basically couldn't deny. Nara mulled over everything for a couple of moments and acknowledged his proposition. A short time later he brought her back home and had Natalie make up a work contract for her to sign. When Nara was done she was shown where her room was and she was then acquainted with Adrian Agresti, who she immediately turned out to be dear companions with Anne. They were like siblings. Gabriel Agresti even got her into a school called School Françoise Dupont. There Nara made such countless new companions and, surprisingly, joined two clubs that she truly cherished: expressive dance and fencing, who she delighted in doing with Adrian, who loves fencing as well. Flashback closures. Nara grins, completing her errands as she goes to her room and changes into her outfit, which was the mythical beast hoodie and red skirt and so forth that she purchased at the air terminal. She then snatches her sack, which has a red-winged serpent on it. A short time later she gets herself an apple in the kitchen and heads to school. On out she sees Adrian sneaking around attempting to go to class. That is the point at which her telephone rang. She sees her telephone and sees it's Gabriel calling her. She in a split second responses it. Hi. She says on the telephone. Naru, is Adrian with you? He escaped. He asked her. She looked across the road and sees Adrian currently viewing at her as though frightened that she planned to hand him over. Anyway, she just grinned and winks at him. No, sorry, I haven't seen him. She deceived her supervisor, making Adrian grin and mouth thank you to her and run off towards the school, making her grin to herself as Gabriel hangs up. You truly care about that kid, don't you, Pack? Kurama asked her, making her laugh and progress forward with her method for tutoring, choosing to take an alternate bearing to make her life more conceivable. Obviously I do. Adrian resembles a younger sibling to me, she tells Kurama happily, making Kurama smile, perceiving how cheerful she was. She was genuinely disliked the phony satisfaction she had back in Konoha. Sincerely it made him wiped out that she needed to continuously claim to be content when she wasn't in that damnation opening. Yet after she left she started to grin for dislike, those phony grins she generally uses to trick everybody. They even turned out to be nearer now. Also after Naru owned up to him that she never detested him for how she was dealt with and abhorred the town, rather causing the fox to confess to her he despised the Uchiha family more than he loathed her, and they were presently companions. Gracious, I trust won't be late on my most memorable day, she tells herself, since today was her most memorable day. In the 10th grade last year she was in the 9th grade, something she partook in a ton anyway. She detested being in a similar class as Chloe, a fair-haired young lady who Nara needs to meet a ton since she was a companion of Adrian's, and on the grounds that their folks cooperates. It really dazzled her with how patient Adrian is with Chloe. Nara shakes those contemplations somewhere far away from me and progresses forward with her way. Simultaneously anyway, Fu was going to recover the Ladybug and Dark Feline Phenomenal to provide for his two picked champions Marinette and Adrian to assist manage the Bad Soul, who is presently possessing the Butterfly Extraordinary. But on his way there he unexpectedly and inadvertently stumbled on the steps he was moving down from at the recreation area. His eyes enlarged and he was going to land face first on the ground when out of nowhere, without a moment to spare, he was saved by a fair-haired young lady wearing a mythical serpent hoodie. "Are you okay?" she asked him with concern, and puts him securely on the ground. Securely. He gazed at the young lady quietly, and afterward he gets a thought and grins at her. "Yes, I'm, thank you, miss," he shares with her, making Naru grin, feeling cheerful at that, and she speeds towards her school while Fu watches her leave happily as Waze emerges. "Expert, what are you thinking at present?" he asked him inquisitively, making Fu go to him. "I'm imagining that the new Ladybug and Feline Noir will get some additional assistance," he tells him, and heads back to his loft, amazing the Kwame who trails behind him. At the point when Naru showed up at the school, she enters inside and finds Adrian wasn't there, making her glare, realizing her companion was found by Natalie and was brought back home. Poor Adrian, Naru tells herself, and she enters inside the study hall and goes to sit close to Juelka. "Morning, Jewel." Naru welcomed her merrily, making Juelka grin a bashful grin at her. Juelka was a modest and calm young lady at this point, notwithstanding that Naru got along incredibly well with her and they were extremely dear companions. She really got along very well with her other female colleagues, with the exception of Chloe Sabrina. She truly thought the young lady was pleasant when Chloe wasn't anywhere near. However, when she was around her, she was the ruined young lady's worker. Genuinely, it made her debilitated simply mulling over everything. In the end, class starts to begin and they were acquainted with their new educator, Miss Bustier, but during the class Ivan lashed out at Kim for giving him a note and he nearly hit him, making Naru scowl at that. Kim somewhat helped her to remember Kiba, as it were. She really felt terrible for Ivan when he was shipped off the director's office. She then frowned. She didn't have the foggiest idea why, yet she feared something planned to happen genuine soon, something downright horrendous. In the interim, at a secret area, a man wearing a high dull purple dress shirt without a neckline over a hazier purple coat with a dark butterfly molded lapel, a butterfly-like ornament, was in the focal point of his chest, and he likewise wore dress jeans in similar shade as the coat and dark gloves and dress shoes without bands, and wore a silver cowl with a butterfly form design over most of his face and neck, and he held a dim purple stick with a purple gemstone on top of it. Pessimistic feelings. "This is wonderful, exactly what I really want." Outrage, misery, he says with an underhanded sneer all over as a white butterfly lands in the center of one of his hands and he covers it with his other hand and it turns into a dark purple-like butterfly. "Consume an opening into his heart, my horrendous Akuma," he says as the butterfly takes off. "Fly away, my little Akuma, and evilize him," he says evilly. Naru was making a beeline for concentrate on corridor at the library with Juelka, who she was visiting with, on the way there. "Hello Naru, how about you come over my place this end of the week? The new blood and gore flick will play on television," she offered her, making Naru smile. "Sure, I love to. I'll in any event bring by a portion of those snacks from last time," she tells her happily, making Juelka grin, feeling blissful at that. She cherishes investing energy with Naru. She was so kind to her, she didn't mind at all that she was tranquil and modest and, surprisingly, went to bat for her when Chloe was singling out her once in any event. Gambling getting terminated for her. She wasn't the one in particular who preferred having her around. However, her sibling Luca likewise enjoyed her too. He even had eyes for her and has been enamored with her since last year. She even realized Naru cares deeply about her sibling too, yet was excessively bashful to tell him. While en route to the library, a similar dark butterfly flies into the school and towards Ivan, who was holding the very note that Kim gave him. As it flies inside it, and a pinkish butterfly-like cover shows up around his face, and he could hear a voice conversing with him. "Stoneheart, I'm bird of prey moth. I give you the power. Go look for retribution on the people who have violated you," he tells him evilly, as Ivan acquired a shrewd grin all over. "Okay, Falcon Moth," he says, and afterward he was encircled by a dark purplish air pocket like air that totally overwhelms him, transforming him totally. head Damocles, who was trusting that Ivan will thump on his entryway to enter, got eager, very much enter, he says, and afterward the entryway was separated and Ivan, who was currently Stoneheart, showed up at the entryway as a Goliath rock-like beast, Kim. He yells indignantly and breaks out of the workplace through the wall. Naru, who heard it, ran outside all the others and sees what's the deal with Marinette and Juelka remaining close to her alongside the new young lady Alia, Kim. Stoneheart hollers out once more and hurls a vehicle subsequent to picking it and takes off. Was that Ivan? Naru asked with shock. So cool, Juelka says with a smile all over as everybody left the school as the day was dropped due to this occurrence. So Naru surges home and goes to Adrian's room, who heard the clamors as well and goes outside to see what was happening alongside Naru. What on earth is going on? He asked her, making Naru uncertain too. I have no clue. I was at school briefly and before I know it Ivan, my colleague, transforms into a Goliath rock beast. Naru says, uncertain what was happening as she and Adrian returns inside considering what to do. That is the point at which the two of them saw the two weird boxes on Adrian's footstool. Why is this here? The two of them asked simultaneously. The two of them took a gander at one another and the two of them got one of the crates. When Naru opened hers, it seemed as though it contained a neckband with a dark dab with red lines in the center. Adrian's crate contains a dark rings with a green feline paw print in the center. Unexpectedly little bundles of lights, seems one red and one green. The green light assumed the type of a little dark feline with green eyes, the other was a little red winged serpent. A winged serpent? Naru asked with shock as the little dark feline yawned a little. While cool, it resembles the genies from the lights, Adrian says, making Plag stretch. I met him once, so he gives wishes. Serious deal, I'm far more charming. Plag, good to meet you, he says, and afterward he starts to zoom around attempting to eat and contact all that he sees within Adrian's room, making long murmured and face palmed a little. I'm very upset for my kindred Kwame's conduct, miss. I'm your Kwame. It's a joy to meet you, youthful miss. He welcomed Naru in a well-mannered and kind tone. Naru rapidly shakes out of her shock similarly as Adrian gets Plag. We actually don't have any idea what. You're not kidding, Adrian says, and Plag moans. Look, we are Kwames. We award controls. Yours is the force of obliteration while long around there is the force of flawlessness, he says, making Naru slant her head a piece at that. The force of flawlessness? She asks Long, who goes to her and grins. Yes, that is right. What it fundamentally does, it empowers you to change into three components: wind, lightning, or water. Once you go through three components you have 5 minutes to change back. Any inquiries? He asked her, making Naru think back. External, seeing the annihilation brought about by Stoneheart. A couple of moments later she puts on the neckband while Adrian puts on the ring. The two miraculous changes structures, with Adrian's ring transforming into a silver variety. Naru's jewelry transforms into a little blue precious stone with the Japanese kanji for mythical beast on it. For what reason did its appearance change? Naru asked Long as she took a gander at herself in the mirror. Well, each phenomenal has a cover appearance which takes on an alternate look contingent upon the wielder, Long clarifies for her, making Naru gesture her head in understanding. Presently, obviously both of you won't be distant from everyone else. You'll be working close by the new wielder of the Ladybug. Marvelous too. Now to enact your extraordinary youthful miss, you should say, Long, bring the tempest, he tells her happily, making Naru grin back. Long, bring the tempest, Naru says, and afterward she changes. The top half was red and dark with dark gloves on her hands with brilliant trim around and a dark winged serpent in the center with its mouth open as though prepared to eat up the three varieties in the center that addresses every component she can control. Her hair acquires red features and she wears a facial covering that has 4 red mythical beast-like horns, and at the base was a red shirt skirt with dark tights and red artful dance shoes on her feet, and she had a red blade lashed to her back, and her eyes and the eye openings turned into a brilliant variety like a winged serpent. The top portion of her ensemble is like Ryuko's from Marvelous Ladybug, just the base half is unique. At the point when Naru was finished changing, she grins as Adrian had completed the process of changing too, seeming to be a dark feline superhuman. The two of them smiled at one another and leave through the window and towards where Stoneheart was as Naru utilized her ninja, preparing to bounce, starting with one housetop, then onto the next when she saw Adrian had got himself enveloped with a Ladybug's hero's yo and hops down and sits on the street lamp that they were attached to. My kitty making new companions as of now? Naru asked him flippantly and liberates the two of them and jumps down before them, smiling at them both. Ideal to meet ya, I'm Ryuheim, she tells her with a smile all over, and I'm Feline Noir. He tells their accomplice and attempts to put the yo back together and coincidentally hits Naru in the head. I'm very cumbersome, she tells them, making Naru laugh and the rub where she was hit in spite of what coincidentally find. It's our most memorable day all things considered. Naru tells her happily that is the point at which they heard a crashing commotion and Feline Noir goes for it. Do you believe you're going kitty feline? Naru asked him in a tongue-in-cheek and half-serious tone, to save sets obviously. He says with a smile all over, making Ryuheim murmur a little and takes a gander at her kindred champion with a light-hearted grin. Come on, we better go, ensure he doesn't wind up dead, she tells her, making marionette gesture her head and hesitantly trails behind her. At the point when they showed up at the soccer field, they see Stoneheart annihilating everything, attempting to get his hands on Kim, making Naru draw her sword and utilizations her ninja speed and the quick speed work she got when she began learning expressive dance, and uses her sword to struck Stoneheart to inspire him to relinquish Kim as she gets him. Leave, it's undependable, Ryuheim tells him as Kim didn't should be told 2 times and ran away from the area. Feline Noir and Ryuheim was battling against Stoneheart while Bird of Prey Moth could see everything through Stoneheart's eyes. Everything will plan. Ladybug and Feline Noir's supernatural has been enacted alongside the winged serpent. Wonderful, he says evilly when Alya was nearly hit by a soccer net, which Ryuheim saw and panted. Winged serpent. She hollers out and transforms into a huge whirlwind and figures out how to get Alya to somewhere safe and secure up in the stands of the arena. Remain here, it'll be safe, she tells her. That is when Ladybug bounces down and initiates her rabbit's foot, which was a plunging suit. That is a peculiar thing it gave you. However, at that point again I surmise anything can be utilized as a 4-leaf clover, Naru says with a shrug. Ladybug then glances around and gets a thought and takes a gander at Feline Noir and Ryuheim and afterward at Stoneheart and saw that one of his hands were constantly shut, concealing something. She then gets a thought and puts a hose inside the plunging suit, making Ryuheim take a gander at her inquisitively. Okay Ryuheim, I have a thought, are you prepared? She asked her, making her smile, consistently. She says, and she tells her arrangement, and Ryuheim grins at Feline Noir in a self-reproachful way. Sorry about this kitty. Naru apologizes to him and got him and tossed him at Stoneheart, who got him with one free hand, and afterward Ladybug bounces up and he gets her with his shut hand, dropping the item that was containing the Akuma. Ryuheim the tap. Ladybug shouts out, making her gesture her head, and goes to the tap and turns it on, making the jumper's suit explode, making him let go of her and making her run towards the article and trample it, liberating the Akuma and turning Ivan back to ordinary. Okay. That was wonderful, Naru says merrily and gets around to them. Every one of the 3 of us, we made an incredible group, Ryuheim tells them cheerfully. Pound it. They generally said at that point and beat their clenched hands together. That is when Feline Noir's ring begins signaling. Gracious, that is our prompt. Must go, see ya later Bug, anticipate doing this again with ya, Ryuheim shouts to her and leaves with Feline Noir. The following day Naru was watching the information with Adrian about the occasions that played out yesterday, as Long was cheerfully eating some mythical serpent organic product while Naru was in the middle of collapsing clothing and taking care of them, wearing her house cleaner uniform while she grins. I can't really accept that was astounding. Every one of the three of us was an astonishing group. Naru tells Adrian enthusiastically. However, at that point she saw Plag wasn't eating the food that she brought from the kitchen. Hello Plag, would you confirm or deny that you are eager? I thought Kwamis required food in the wake of battling, Naru asked him inquisitively as Long saw this. Presently Plag, don't be fastidious, our proprietors set us up some awesome food, he shares with him, making the dark feline Kwami go to them. Assuming I will have something to eat, I will require something light, he tells them, making Naru and Adrian took a gander at one another and afterward back at Plag. Well, okay, what is it that you need to eat? Naru asked him and Plag smiles at them. A couple of moments later Naru got back with some camembert cheddar and Plag starts to dive in. Well, no less than somebody prefers that stinky cheddar we have in the kitchen, Naru expresses, gazing at this scene quietly with a moan. Naru, you ought to come see this, Long shares with her and she heads toward the television and they see on the news how individuals were transforming into frozen sculptures that seem to be stone hard. What's happening? Naru asked with shock, and the two Kwamis turns the two blondies. Did you catch the Akuma? They asked them simultaneously. What do you mean by catch the Akuma? Naru asked them and Long starts to clear up for them that Akumas can duplicate and that it was the explanation they must be caught on the grounds that once Ivan becomes akumatized again then the stone beasts will turn into his military, making both Naru and Adrian wheezed at that, and what's all the more, no one but Ladybug can catch the Akumas, no other supernatural has that power. Plag lets them know, making Naru revile at that and glances through the window with a decided look all over as she contacted her Marvelous with Long on her shoulder. Then, at that point, we will simply need to try to catch it in the future. We won't misstep the same way all over again, right Adrian? Naru says with a smile all over, pivoting to see her dearest companion, making him grin and gesture his head as they beat their clenched hands together. The following day Naruto had wrapped up doing the dishes from breakfast while watching the report about the stone creatures in Paris as she takes care of the last plate and switches off the television with Long drifting close to her. All will be great, don't stress, the main opportunity we get, we will assist Ladybug with catching the Akuma. Long tells her, making Naru go to her Kwami and grin and gesture her head in arrangement. That is the point at which she saw Adrian slipping into the kitchen and taking some camembert so he can give it to Plag while sneaks off to school. Long goes to Naru and grins at the light-haired young lady. Adrian is so fortunate to have you as a companion, Naru, he tells her, making Naru grin delicately. I believe I'm the good for one. I've never had a genuine companion before until I met Adrian, despite the fact that I need to concede he's something beyond a companion. He resembles a sibling to me, Naru shares with him as Long conceals under her cap and she goes to prepare for school. Whenever she was changed into her typical garments she strolls to school while paying attention to music from her telephone through her earphones. The melody she was paying attention to was Out for Adoration from Has Been Lodging, one of her #1 shows. Her #1 person is Carmela Cardmine. As a matter of fact, she was the justification for why Naru became intrigued by expressive dance, since she perceived how cool she looked while utilizing expressive dance to battle, so Naru chose to learn expressive dance to use as a battling style for herself. Naru even anticipated utilizing that style while she's going about as Ryuheim. I need to concede, unit. It was shrewd of you to begin learning expressive dance. I felt quite skeptical at first, yet in the wake of perceiving how it made you considerably more adaptable and gave you an expansion in your endurance too. Kurama tells her, making her smile. See, the majority of my thoughts are great. Naru tells him as she showed up at school she sees Marinette looking clamped down. Are you okay, Mari? Naru asked her with concern, making the little kid go to her. Better believe it, I'm fine, just got some stuff at the forefront of my thoughts at the present time, she tells her, making Naru grimace while gazing at her quietly. Well, okay, however, in the event that you want to talk I'm here, okay, don't keep things inside, Naru tells her, making Marinette grin at her in a thankful way. That is when Alya in the middle of between the two. Look at this, both of you. she shares with them and shows them her new blog, Ladybug, presenting to you all the most recent news about the coolest superhuman ladybug. She shares with them and Naru takes a gander at it and smiles. Wow, that is so cool, Alia. You had quite recently posted that video you have taken of Ladybug and it's as of now gotten so many perspectives. I can see this blog will be a success. Naru tells her companion, making Alia smile back and a little until Naru saw Ivan walking towards the storage space after Chloe directed a few sentiments toward him, giving careful consideration to leave frogs and green paint bombs in her storage later on as Naru goes to her companions. Hello, both of you, go on. I will keep an eye on Ivan. Genuine Speedy, Naru shares with them and heads towards the storage space as Long looks through her hoodie pack. Naru, Ivan is vexed at this moment. On the off chance that he doesn't quiet down, then he'll be akumatized. You need to inspire him to remain even-tempered rapidly. He tells her, making her gesture her head. Don't stress, Long, I definitely know what to do. She tells her and she heads inside and finds Ivan sitting on the floor paying attention to music. Naru grins at him and plunks down close to him, not mindful on the off chance that she gets her skirt filthy as she contacts his arm, making him notice she was there, and he removes his earphones and she keeps on grinning at her cohort. You know, Ivan, you ought to educate Mylene how you feel concerning her. She lets him know, making him turn away from her. I don't have a clue, he tells her, making her laugh a little and bumps his shoulder a little. Gracious, come on, I've seen the manner in which you take a gander at her. She shares with him, winking at him, making him peer down, feeling a piece humiliated as she rubs his back. Hello, it's okay, you don't need to be so down about it. After the entirety of nothing bad can really be said about loving a young lady, and I figure Mylene might feel the same way about you too, she tells him, attempting to support him, making Ivan moan a little. It doesn't make any difference, I'm so terrible with words at any rate. He tells her, making Naru shrug a little. So you don't words to let a young lady know how you feel about them. There are alternate ways of conceding your affections for somebody. You can make her some chocolate or get her blossoms or think of her an affection letter. Naru started to name off the initial not many things that Ivan can see Mylene of his sentiments towards her that came to her head. I could think of her a tune, he says, making Naru grin at him in a reassuring way. That is great, she'll cherish that without a doubt. Pull out all the stops, Ivan, you got this, I'm supporting you. Naru lets him know, making him grin and get up and run out of the storage space, feeling greatly improved, making Naru grin and sit back up as Long shows up close to her. Extraordinary work, Naru. Besides the fact that you kept Ivan from getting akumatized, you likewise assisted him with empowering him to admit to Mylene. He tells her, making Naru grin delicately. Obviously, Ivan might appear to be large and mean, he's really a genuine darling who would never pose a threat to anyone. He and Mylene are ideally suited for one another, Naru shares with Long, who grins back at her and returns into stowing away into her hoodie. Naru then leaves the storage space when she coincidentally runs into Luca, making her leap a little. Goodness, my golly, Luca, you terrified me, Naru shares with him while battling the desire to become flushed. Oh, on the off chance that it isn't my pack's future mate, let me know while's the wedding. Kurama asked her, making Naru intellectually scowl at him. Shut up, fluffball, before I make your region into a 5-year-old young lady's room again, all pink with pixies and princesses, and you wearing a decent beautiful dress. Naru undermined him, and that shut him up right away. Luca grins at her. Sorry I didn't see you coming. Jules, let me know you're coming over this end of the week, right? I'm happy we haven't spent time with one another in for a spell, he tells her, making Naru turn away a piece to conceal her blush. Yeah, sorry about that, my occupation can get pretty bustling. In addition to, I had a dance presentation I needed to plan for too. However, things are currently quieting down once more so I can hang out again too. I truly miss investing energy with you folks too, Naru confessed to Luca with a little grin all over while feeling her heart race a little. It's fine, I comprehend, I have some work as well, so I get it. In any case, I better return to my group. It was decent seeing you. he tells her and heads to his own study hall. As he left, Naru stopped for a couple of moments and puts her hands to her heart where she could feel it thumping a mile each hour. She had never under any circumstance fallen head over heels for anybody previously, so it felt so pleasant. She grins to herself and goes to class while Long was in her sack and grins to himself as he perceived how his proprietor took a gander at that kid and gave careful consideration to unite them. Naru planned to forge ahead with her method for classing when her telephone then rings. She halted briefly and hauled it out and sees it's Natalie on the telephone, and she responds to it. "Hi." She says on the telephone, "Naru, Adrian is going to class today. If it's not too much trouble, watch out for him and ensure he's protected." She tells her, making Naru acquired a grin all over. She knows the amount Natalie thinks often about Adrian and thinks often about him as though he was her own youngster. "Obviously I guarantee I'll not ensure anything happens to him," Naru shares with her on the telephone and afterward hangs up as she at long last gets to her group and sees Adrian was there and was sitting close to Nino, and she sees that Marinette was irritated, so she plunks down close to Juelka and incline right up front. What was the deal? For what reason does Marinette look irritated? She asked her companion, who inclines in near her and murmurs back to her. Evidently Chloe put gum on Marinette's seat, and when the new youngster attempted to get it off, Marinette thought he was the person who put the gum on her seat. "Still, I can't trust he's companions with Chloe," she murmurs to Naru, who moans a drained murmur. "Truly I'm shocked as well. Adrian has the persistence of a holy person with her since she was his cherished, lifelong companion since they were babies. Thus due to that I surmise he should see a side of her that even I have barely any insight into. However, genuinely even Adrian's understanding has cut off points, and before long she will regally mess up and she will lose Adrian everlastingly." Naru murmurs back to her as Juelka didn't appear to be astounded at that, and they get down on present when their educator called out to them, that is when Mess Bustier calls out to Ivan, and he came getting through the wall as Stoneheart shouting present, Mylene. He hollers out and heads toward her and snatches her and Chloe and leaves with them. Everybody started to overreact, and Naru and Adrian both took a gander at one another and gestured at one another and get out of class and went to the washrooms. As Long emerges from her sack, I'm speculating the adoration admission must have not worked out positively, assuming he got akumatized once more. Long says with a glare, making Naru murmur and grin, "That is okay Long, this time we can at last settle this by assisting Ladybug with catching the akuma." Naru tells him with a smile all over. "Long, bring the tempest," she calls out, and consequently changes whenever she was changed. She smiled and goes outside to get together with Feline Noir, who was abducted by one of the many stone creatures, and she hops down and uses her effortless development to get to him too rapidly and kicks him down, making him let go of Feline Noir. Similarly, as Ladybug shows up. "No time like the present, Bug," Rioheim tells her with a smile all over. "Amazing luck, milady," Feline Noir says too, and smoothly quits a little. "We really want to go to the Eiffel Tower. On the off chance that we catch the akuma from Stoneheart, we can switch the Harem." Ladybug lets them know, pursuing Rioheim gesture her head in understanding at that, realizing she was correct. They figured out how to find Stoneheart, who tossed Chloe down, and Rioheim goes to her and gets her and recovers her. She's so fortunate. Adrian thinks often about her since, supposing that she didn't, then I would drop her on her butt or let her go splat on the substantial. Rioheim contemplates internally and puts her down, and she goes to her dad while Rioheim clears the fanciful starts of Chloe from herself. Unexpectedly, Stoneheart then, at that point, hacks up a few dark butterflies and they all appear as somebody's head. Ladybug, Feline Noir, and Rioheim. "I'm bird of prey moth," he tells them, making the three legends gaze at him with wide eyes. "Falcon moth." They generally said simultaneously, "You three have caused such a lot of harm and mischief to individuals of Paris. Give up your miraculous to me on the double. If not, these individuals will keep on misery," he says evilly, making Rioheim sneer. "Better believe it, right, bird of prey moth." similar to we would succumb to that briefly, Ryoheim says with a grin all over. Other than we know who's the genuine issue here, each of the three of us won't ever give up to you and we will continue to battle until the day we expose you and make you surrender your wonderful. Ladybug reported, and afterward she utilized her yo to catch the Akumas and afterward set them free from her yo as they transformed into white butterflies, making everybody cheer while feline more gaze at her in stunningness. Whoever she is, I love that young lady Ryoheim, he tells her, making her sneer a little. I'll make a memorable point that for shakedown later, she says in a prodding tone, making his face turn a dazzling red and making Ryoheim laugh. Rabbit's foot. Ladybug yells out and she brings a parachute, a parachute. You realize an affection letter or something to that effect would presumably be better in this present circumstance to unite these two, Ryoheim says with a scowl, since she genuinely felt that Mylene and Ivan were great together and were intended for one another too. Goodness, don't stress, uniting them is essential for my arrangement, however your powers comes in plan too, Ryoheim. Since once when we break the article containing the Akuma they will turn around to ordinary and will wind up falling, so I want you to utilize the breeze-winged serpent procedure and assist with catting Noir get them. She tells her, making Ryoheim gesture her head. Don't concern, you can depend on me, Bug, Ryoheim says with a wink, and they get to work. Ryoheim scaled with feline Noir and Ladybug. After they had figured out how to get Stoneheart to relinquish the paper with the Akuma inside and figured out how to inspire him to get Mylene when she was tumbling to inspire him to relinquish the article, Ladybug squashed the item and liberated the Akuma, and subsequently Ivan turns around to typical and he and Mylene starts to fall, wind mythical serpent. Ryoheim yells out and transforms into the breeze and uses to speed towards them, and she figures out how to get Mylene and transforms into her strong structure and terrains on the ground securely with her and puts her all the way down as feline Noir gets Ivan and welcomes him all the way down securely, while Ladybug utilizes the parachute and descends securely also. A while later she gets the Akuma and hurls the rabbit's foot in the air, fixing everything. After that Ryoheim grins and hands the adoration melody that Ivan composed over to Ivan. I figure Mylene ought to be the one to peruse the tune you composed for her this time, she tells them, and Mylene took it and read it. The following day after the episode, Mylene and Ivan presently started to date, making Nara think they were so charming together. They truly are so charming together, Long tells her, making her snicker. They really are. Nara says, holding her books carefully shrouded as she heads to class. As she was doing this she saw Adrian taking a gander at Marinette, who was all the while giving him a demise glare, making her grin at him. Adrian, if you need to make more companions then, at that point, make the best decision and clear up the false impressions with her, okay? Nara shares with her companion and gives him a wink and heads to class. After school had finished, Nara saw it was pouring, so she took her umbrella and started to head back home. Similarly, as she was doing this, her umbrella flew none of her concern by a whirlwind and falls into a puddle, and she runs over to get it when unexpectedly it was lifted up off the ground and put over her head again by a grinning Luca. Here, he tells her, making Nara blush and grin, and acknowledges it. Thank you, Luca. She shares with him again, feeling her heart was dashing. On the off chance that you need, you can come over my place and get dry. He offered her, making her blush considerably more. Certain thanks, I feel a debt of gratitude. Nara shares with him, and she utilizes the umbrella to assist with keeping them both dry while they strolled back to his home together. While this was occurring, Expert Fu was watching Nara with ways. You were correct, Expert. She is a decent decision for the mythical serpent, marvelous. He tells him, making Fu grin delicately. For sure, and you were correct too about me being excessively old to proceed with this. That young lady down there, not exclusively will she give solidarity to them, yet she can likewise assist them with turning out to be undeniable legends, and potentially for me a commendable replacement too. He tells ways and starts to wander off with the turtle Kwame while Neru strolls close by her crush as Luca was additionally glad to be this near the young lady who resembled a tune that continued to play in his mind and in his heart.